Hello, church. Welcome to this week's message. My name is Henry Loke. This is God's Feeding Station. It's nice to be with you again today, taking advantage of the nice weather while we can, hanging out outside today. But we are continuing to talk about Isaiah. We're in Isaiah 7 today, just covering 4 verses, 10 through 13. Was going to go through all the way through the Emmanuel prophecy, but in reading, that's really involved, and there's a lot of things surrounding that I need to read up on, things from the ancient language and that kind of stuff. So rather than not be fully aware of all the things involved with that prophecy, because it's a lot more detailed than we think. We think it's just a prophecy of Jesus and we're just off and running. But it's a lot more to it. So I want to make sure that, with going through Isaiah, it's a hard enough book to understand. I want to make sure I have my ducks in a row. So we're just going to cover chapter 7, verses 10 through 13 today. And it's going to be enough. 4 pages of notes here. So, because Ahaz is being put to the test today. And what's the test? The test is, where's he going to put his faith? In whom is he going to put his faith? And he's going to be tested to ask God for a sign. And it's not going to be for the reasons we think, not at least for the reasons I originally thought. And the words of verse 9 are at stake today. If you go back to verse 9, it says, "If you are not firm in the faith, you will not be firm at all." And this is the big question, the big test for Ahaz. Where does his faith lie? And who is he relying on? He's being challenged by Isaiah to put Isaiah's words to the test today. Ask for evidence. Ask God to prove what Isaiah is saying is true. But Ahaz doesn't want that evidence. And why? Why doesn't he want that evidence? Because if he gets the evidence, if God does indeed give him a sign, he's going to be proven wrong. And because he's already made up his mind. He knows in his mind, in his heart, where he wants to go, who he wants to rely on, where he wants to get his help from. Right? He's going to trust Assyria rather than trust in God. And so he's already made up his mind. And if God shows up and proves him wrong, he's going to be embarrassed. And he doesn't want that. So he's more interested in saving face than saving his country. He's being self-reliant, and he's going to be proven wrong, dreadfully wrong. And this is the issue with us. Once you lose faith in God, once we lose faith in God, faith that he cares, faith that his intentions are good towards us, faith that he has a plan, when we lose faith in all of that, when we cast all that aside, the most ridiculous ideas we have, the most foolish notions we have, all of a sudden start to seem wise in our eyes. We start to think that, yeah, we're pretty smart. We know what we're doing. We've got this under control. And it's always proven to be wrong. I tell this story often where I hate confrontation. And I always think I know how it's going to go, and it never goes the way I think. It's because I'm relying on my own reason on how things are going to on how things are going to play out, and they never do. They never play out the way I think, but they always play out in accordance with God's plan. And so once we lose faith in God, our foolish ideas, we think now, are wise, and it usually doesn't end well one way or another. John Wesley says, if a man will not believe God, he will believe anything. And that's true. You see it today. We don't have God in a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis from a government perspective. And we don't have a lot of God in what we do from a personal perspective. And you see the state of things, the state of the world right now. And I don't mean to be that everything is bad. Not everything is bad. But we are definitely not walking a path that God has for us, that God has intended. because we've taken God out of everything, and we think, we put faith in our leaders, we put faith in pastors who are false teachers, and you see where it's gotten us. And so I don't mean to be a doomsday guy all the time, but again, we have to be honest with ourselves and take a look at things honestly and say, this country is not what it once was. Israel is not what it once was. And we are in the same boat now. And so we need to put God back in at the head of things in order to have wisdom, to have true discernment, and to know the truth. So Ahaz is going to trust Assyria, who's going to turn out to be Judah's bitter enemy, and the fact that he thinks that Assyria will have Judah's best interests at heart is utter nonsense. But Ahaz, again, doesn't believe God, so he doesn't have the discernment to sort that out. But God will keep his word. The coming attack from Syria and Israel will not succeed, but Judah's got to be brought to her knees, because she has to understand God is sovereign, and he will not be mocked. And her idolatry and her faith in other things besides him goes against the covenant that they've made together. And the covenant's been broken, and consequences have to be suffered. So, beginning in verses 10 and 11, again the Lord spoke to Ahaz. Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol, or as high as heaven. Right? Isaiah continues to challenge Ahaz on this just dumb idea of turning to Assyria for help. And again, he challenges Ahaz to trust God. And he uses the word, the Lord spoke. Right? The Lord spoke to Ahaz again. That says this isn't a message from Isaiah. This is a message to Ahaz from God himself. Isaiah is not speaking for himself. And he doesn't speak just when he's asked to. When Isaiah speaks, it is God who is speaking. There is such a tight, deep relationship between Isaiah and God that when Isaiah speaks, he is speaking the mind of God. That's how close his relationship with God is. And so Isaiah doesn't say he speaks about God. He's very clear to say he speaks directly for God. And he challenges Ahaz to give God a chance, to prove himself, to prove that everything Isaiah has been saying is true. And this is normal behavior for God, offering a sign. Throughout history, God has offered signs to those who have exhibited faith in him. He doesn't do it to get people to follow him. This isn't okay, God, you show me a sign and I'll believe in you. It never works that way. Faith always has to come first. But when it does, evidence always follows. And it comes in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's just a quiet voice. Sometimes it's parting the Red Sea. It's bringing Israel out of Egypt. It's manna in the desert. It's raising of the dead and turning water into wine. It shows, God shows himself in different ways. But he always does. Just creation. Sitting outside is why I love the fact that we've been doing these things outside over the past month or so, because just being out here and being able to see God's creation and be in the midst of it while talking about him is just a cool thing. And so God always shows himself to bolster and strengthen those who believe in him. And Isaiah tells Ahaz, look, dude, ask for anything. The sky's the limit. Ask for whatever sign you want, as big a sign you want. God will show you. And he uses the term, your God, right? Not a God, not the God, your God, a God you know, the God you know to be true. Right? This isn't some unknown entity to Ahaz. He knows exactly who he's dealing with here. He knows who he is because he's bound himself to Israel in a covenant made before Ahaz was even a thought. And he is the God that has bound himself to the house of David, whom Ahaz is a descendant of by a covenant of love. So Ahaz knows exactly who Isaiah is speaking for. And so this isn't a foreign God to Ahaz. And so knowing all of this, why would Ahaz refuse? Again, we talked about this earlier. He's made up his mind. He's bet all he has on Assyria. And he knows better. He knows that this isn't going to work. The Bible is laden with the history of Israel trying to do things on her own and failing, and then doing things in step with God and being successful, being triumphant, conquering her enemies. Again, go back to Egypt. Egypt was probably the baddest military on the planet, or one of, when God brought Israel out of Egypt and Israel defeated her. That could not have been done without God. So Ahaz knows this. And yet he's turning to Assyria for help. He's made up his mind. And now the problem is he's caught between a rock and a hard place. Because he can't make any bold statements about going to Assyria, about having made up his mind, because he's going to be shown to be faithless to God. And he can't come out and ask for this sign because he's going to be proven wrong. Right? He's going to be shown to be a fool in his logic. So no bold statement about unbelief, and he can't really come out and contradict Isaiah because it's going to show him to be a faithless king. Right? No matter what sign God gives him, it's going to prove that Ahaz has made a mistake in going with Assyria. So he's caught now. And so he puts on this mask of false piety. In verse 12 he says, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. He's alluding to Scripture here. He's alluding to Deuteronomy 6:16. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. Well, that last part of that scripture is hugely important, because Ahaz has taken that scripture out of context. That scripture in Deuteronomy is a response to Israel's lack of faith and rebellion at Meribah. Right? Meribah and Massah. Right? You can go back to Exodus 17 and read that story. We're not going to do that here. But that's what Deuteronomy 6 is referring to. The people wanted water. They challenged God. They rebelled against God. And that scripture in Deuteronomy is a response to that. Right? So Ahaz is using that out of context to put on these airs of false piety. And it's, because the other thing is, as God brings signs to bolster and strengthen faith, God also welcomes being tested by the faithful. If you go back to Judges 6 and read about Gideon and the fleece, beginning at verse 36, you'll see that God welcomes it. And not only welcomes it, Gideon does it more than once. So being tested by those who are faithful is not a problem for God, because he will use it to strengthen their faith. Almost as, I don't know if it's reward is the best term to use there, but he doesn't have a problem with being tested by those who believe in him. Testing God from faith and out of faith that puts all the weight of a person's faith on God, God invites that. He doesn't have a problem with that. So Ahaz doesn't reject this offer out of piety. He rejects it out of unbelief. And he won't allow anything to be presented that will prove him wrong. We see that happen all the time. I see that happen all the time with people on various subjects, especially faith. When you bring evidence of God and evidence of things that people don't want to hear because it goes against their narrative, they don't want to hear it. They will just outright refuse to look at it. That's what we're talking about here. I apologize for the noise. I don't know what's going on over there. But yeah, so that's what this is. So our last verse today, verse 13. And he said, "Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men, that you weary my God also?" Right? Ahaz has tried everybody's patience now, and they're done with him. They've had enough. Isaiah, God, people, prophets, all of them, elders, all of them. They've had enough of him. And they've tried to get Ahaz to act in faith, to behave out of faith in the midst of crisis, and he's refused time and time and time and time and time again. So to continue to talk with him and try to convince him is like casting pearls before swine almost. And now note the change in language. Note the change in language. From your God now to my God. Right? This is who Ahaz has rejected. And Isaiah no longer speaks of God being Ahaz's God. Ahaz has made his decision now. And this is what's going to lead to what we're going to talk about next week with the prophecy of Emmanuel. This is now the final straw that breaks the camel's back. And now, from Isaiah's perspective, the only language that will suit this now is my God, because he's no longer your God, Ahaz, because you have turned your back on him. You've refused to listen to him. And now he's going to bring what he's going to bring. Ahaz has alienated himself. He's alienated the house of David. He's alienated Judah. He's alienated Israel. And the threat of the consequences now hang heavily on the land. And we're going to talk about what that means next week. But Ahaz giving this is like his final chance today. This was his final, God's final effort, reaching out to Ahaz to say, look, try me and have your faith strengthened. When you see what I will do, I will grant you anything. I mean, remember, I'm trying to remember if it's Hezekiah, where he makes the day go back, makes time go backwards. You know, God was willing to do anything to save his people. And Isaiah has just outright refused it. And so we're going to see now what this brings next week. So thanks for everybody being here today. Thanks for all your support. Just want to say thanks to everybody. I don't do it enough, but I am really, really, from the bottom of my heart, really grateful for all of you, for your support, for your prayers. And I would love to hear from you more. I don't hear from enough of you nearly often enough. But if you have a prayer request, please let me know. You can, or if you have a comment on what we're doing here at the feeding station, you can let me know. It's godsfeedingstation@protonmail.com. It should be at the bottom of the screen here, but if it's not, it's pretty straight ahead. godsfeedingstation@protonmail.com. Love to hear from you, but I just thank you for your support. Thanks for all you do for us, and I just wanted to say thank you. So y'all have a great week, and Lord willing, we'll talk again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.